Hi, my name is Ruby Powers, a board-certified immigration attorney with Powers Law Group in Houston, Texas. This is our weekly update, Facebook Live in English. Later we'll have ours in Spanish. So we have a lot of news, immigration news this week. We're going to give you the highlights of what you need to know. But before we start off, I just wanted to mention that last week I announced my candidacy for State Rep 134 in the inside the loop, the western part of inside 610 of Houston, and that'll be for 2020. Very excited. You can learn more about my candidacy and my issues at rubypowers.com. So very excited. Thank you very much for listening to that, and looking forward to using a lot of my experience as an immigration attorney, mother, business owner, advocate, to better serve our district. So let's move on to the news. So yesterday, U.S. News World Report had mentioned a memo that the White House announced yesterday that basically said that the 23-year-old provision, Trump is asking that federal agencies actually enforce it. Now, basically, it's the one regarding immigrant sponsors to reimburse the government for public benefits that the immigrant that they sponsored used. So this will include Medicaid, food stamps, and things. So I've been practicing 11 years. In that whole time, I've never seen it enforced. We've heard stories, we've heard of things of it being enforced. So generally when an intending immigrant applies, someone has to sponsor them, and that person shows their taxes, pay stubs, employment letter, and they show that they would vouch for them before they go on public benefits. And so basically this is saying that whoever signs that document and shows responsibility will actually they're going to start enforcing this provision. By the end of the year, Trump would like that to be enforced. So I'm afraid that this is going to make a lot of people weary of being sponsors, further corroding legal immigration. There are some reasons why people don't have to maintain that agreement. It's when the immigrant becomes a naturalized citizen, they abandon the green card, they die, pass away, or the other one is if they met 40 quarters of Social Security and therefore they don't need to do it. So we'll continue to monitor that. But in related news to public charge, State Department had their Foreign Affairs Manual change a couple years ago, and now within the last 2 years, and then the Department of Homeland Security has proposed a change with public charge, but it hasn't become official yet. So the rule that was proposed by the Trump administration would prompt immigrant families, including U.S. citizens, to avoid or drop food, medical, and housing benefits provided by the government out of fear that enrollment would prevent family members from securing permanent residency. And so, basically a lot of people are getting off of benefits that otherwise they need for their U.S. citizen children in their households. And public charge was codified in the U.S. immigration law in 1882, and then again in 1952 with the Immigration and Nationality Act. And the Trump administration is seeking to expand that definition. So this is related to the first piece of news because this is the standard of public charge, and then that's why they have the sponsor form, the I-64, I-134. And so if the expansion, then they're interconnected, because if a sponsor shows that they can prove that they can prevent an immigrant from needing public benefits, but then if they also at the same time, and that's being enforced, but at the same time the public charge definition is being expanded, it's increasing its scope of responsibility. So Houston public media had some really good articles this last week, but one of them was about related to 1 in 4 Texas women doesn't have health insurance of childbearing age, and it talks about how health insurance leads to a healthier pregnancy. The reason I wanted to mention that is because it's all interconnected. If people are afraid to take certain benefits for their U.S. citizen children, then there's going to be more health concerns. And we're already seeing it when I've been talking to some health professionals, and I'm working on a committee in partnership between legal and a medical field, especially along the lines of the detained immigrants as well as their health. So we're seeing that be an issue right now. So moving on, according to the New York Times, the Pentagon is going to put up shelter for at least 7,500 migrants. Pentagon will build temporary shelter at the U.S.-Mexico border, and for those who've been turned over to ICE custody. The military will not operate the camps. There's several sites in Texas and Arizona. They'll be in Tucson, Yuma areas of Arizona, and Tornillo, Donna, Laredo, and Del Rio in Texas. So, we're familiar with some of these locations during family separation and the UAC, unaccompanied minors. So there's going to be more migrants held in those locations, in temporary shelter locations. And in more news, Trump plans, this was from last week, I believe, Trump plans for civic tests for legal entrants could keep out highly skilled immigrants, experts say. President Trump announced a sweeping immigration proposal that would alter the way legal immigrants are allowed in the U.S. It would create a system that favors applicants that are highly skilled and well-educated and speak English, more employment over family-based, and it's a merit-based system centered around what they call the Build America visa, and it recognizes extraordinary talent, professional and specialized vocations, exceptional students. So we're continuing to see, this was a proposal to see what comes about with this, but it would also require a civics test that normally is only required when a legal permanent resident is applying for naturalization, and this will become another additional level that an immigrant would have to overcome. So, in the backdrop, we know that Remain in Mexico is still in place, where basically a person who's applying to come to the United States potentially for asylum is processed after they wait a long time and are metered at the border. They come in and then they're given a date to return to the U.S. and sent back to Mexico while they wait. So it now reports from CNN say that from this week, around 6,000 asylum seekers have been returned to Mexico to await immigration hearings. They also the government calls it migrant protection protocols policy. Also, I call it Remain in Mexico because it makes more sense. The number of migrants falling under the policy appears to be doubling over time. So this is, it was challenged, and the policy has drawn opposition from advocates like myself because it puts people in harm's way while they're waiting. But the federal appeals court allowed the Trump administration to continue returning the seekers to Mexico for some time. So that's still happening. People are coming and they are waiting for their time in court in Mexico. Another news, Trump is expected to tap Ken Cuccinelli for the top DHS role on immigration. That was announced this week. It's not official. He's the former Virginia Attorney General. So we'll continue to see what happens along those lines. He has a hard... some people consider him a political savvy immigration hardliner. So we'll continue to see what happens along those lines. And unfortunately, another child died in detention custody this week. And we also learned of another death that was unreported prior and was announced this week. So we're up to 6 children dying since December of 2018. So it was the death of Carlos Hernandez Vasquez, a 16-year-old Guatemalan teenager who died in Texas on Monday. So before December 2018, no children had died in CBP custody in a decade. And now there's been several. So this is hopefully attracting more scrutiny and further review so that we can prevent this from happening. And we mourn for these families and for these children, and we hope that this will stop. In terms of, thanks for listening. we try to give you the best, the highlights of what we can tell you what's going on, so you have a good idea of what's happening in immigration, since it's every day there's something new. But we went to an asylum interview in Minnesota this week. We were honored last week with the Better Business Bureau Award for Excellence, winner of distinction. I believe this is our seventh year to receive this since we started applying. So we're very honored for that. Last weekend I was on the Red, White, and Blue Houston Public Media show that aired last Friday and Saturday, and it's online on our website and also on YouTube. You can see that if you missed it online. So we also have, we will be open on Memorial Day with limited staff. If you call, we just have about a third or so of the staff here. If you need something, feel free to give us a call. I will be speaking at the Texas Bar annual meeting on the 13th in Austin, as well as in Orlando for the American Immigration Lawyers Association annual conference on 2 days that week between the 19th, the 18th, and the 22nd. Also, my book called How to Build, we got rid of the how to. Build and manage your successful immigration law practice without losing your mind will be coming out at the annual conference in June in Orlando, and really excited to promote that coming out soon. I think that's a lot. So thanks for listening. We're here, we're watching the news, we're going to advocacy groups, we're listening to these liaison meetings. I forgot, that's one other thing that happened. I got appointed to the Texas State Bar Immigration Nationality Committee, which is a 2-year term. And what's great about that is that I get to attend meetings with USCIS, Immigration Court, Asylum Office, different entities, tours of consulates, embassies when available. And then I can help liaise with other attorneys, clients, and also with the government to learn how we can improve as much as we can, all procedures and systems. And so very honored to be asked to be on that committee. And so thank you for watching. We'll have our Spanish version later on today. This again is Powers Law Group, Ruby Powers, and have a safe weekend and take care.